Against my better judgment, Canada has made their choice, and they will live with the rewards and consequences of it. Liberals again! In 5th place is Green, who actually shrunk from 2 spots to 1. In 4th place is NDP. After all their promotion for one person, Jagmeet Singh, one of their most obvious losses is that he lost his spot. The more important thing is they went from 25 spots to 7. To be fair, they are adapting and now have a better presented plan, and Jagmeet, the head of party, responsibly and humbly resigned for the good of the party. In 3rd place is Bloc Quebec, who I didn't go into. They went from 32 spots to 23. And the top 2 are Conservatives and Liberals, with Liberals winning. Conservatives grow from 119 to 144. Liberals grow from 160 to 168 spots. Green has, for 2 elections in a row, lost a spot, and 2 elections ago they had 3. NDP is less than 1/3 of the size they were before. Liberals have grown more new spots than the total new size of NDP. Conservatives have grown as many new spots as NDP had before. I've heard people talking about NDP being a threat to Liberals. Those people need to see this. Canada, out of more than 5 options, decided its favourites, which ones they wanted to grow, and they were the same top 2 again, instead of anything else. Look at the part of the pie chart that isn't Conservative or Liberal. They're shrinking. Canada hates them. I promise this review is not all going to be me ranting. After I made my options video, I did even more digging for something to show you, hoping I would find something to compliment any party who won, and I found one thing to compliment the winner, which I'll tell you if you watch enough of this video. But before that, let's look at the map to know who's where. Remember, this election was important because they were, added to deciding who to make laws and plans, also deciding who was going to lead them into war. And it's a war that's not looking so nice for Canada because they're up against a military way more massive than them from a way more war-active culture, with the longest uninterrupted land border between them. To add injury to illness, the majority of Canadian people live reasonably close to that border. Many are reachable by foot soldiers within 24 hours. And it gets worse. Because of Alaska, it's going to be a war on 2 fronts. Let's reveal the map. Here it is. You can see that on the border, it's mostly people voting for options who had the noticeably better war plan, especially in Saanich Gulf Islands, who are going to be attacked early and were the only ones still voting Green. But still, Conservatives' war plan was much more thought about than Liberals, and the people who were expecting consequences voted more appropriately. From this view of the map, it looks like Liberals came second because other options are so dominant on the map. That is, until you zoom in. Liberals' biggest strength was small areas with high populations and so lots of vote zones. It's these few tiny places that ruined it for the wider country. A wider country who is going to have to pay for these people's actions. But in any case, no matter who is where, let's give some more points and medals to see who is better and worse in other topics. Either to cheer you up about the result and get you a bit excited, or tell you off for the stupidity that dominated the country. Only one way to find out. Monarch. They're popular, a majority of subjects love them, a self-sacrificing love. They're treated as gods. The people who make them popular are idiots. I'm comfortable to say what I think about those detestable human abominations of filth, because what matters very deeply to me is competition. You have to earn your wins. So if you're lazy and stupid, you lose, and if you work your back off and you're smart, you win. You wouldn't give a gold medal to an athlete before the race, but a Monarch fan would if the athlete was the son of someone who got a gold medal, because that generation was the son of someone who was the son of someone until one day in the past their ancestor killed someone and stole their gold. You wouldn't do it in sport, but you do it in the boss of your whole nation. Help me understand. I have no words to compliment monarchs because I've used all my nice words on they who committed, studied, practiced, and showed signs of being a great leader. They are the ones who society owes billions to. Give me 1% of the power of a monarch and I will do just as good as them at a minimum. People talk so much about who deserves promotions, and they contradict themselves when they say monarch family members should be allowed to jump into a job, attend or not attend as they wish, no chance they can be replaced, skip every lower ranking job on the way, with or without the skill to do it, and no matter how few days in a year they're at work, they still get the salary, and no matter how many employees can beat them in the skills, they still make front page news where journalists compliment them as elite, whether it's true or not. So if you have any other parents in the world, and you're willing to show up almost every working day, and you're experienced at the job straight below it, and you've been making extra effort and success to impress your boss, and now it's time for someone to be promoted, forget it, because it's going to someone else because marrying someone was valued more. People complain about nepotism when it's a daughter employed halfway up the ladder without an interview, but those people will contradict themselves when nepotism gives a family the ultimate cheat. There are people who complain so much about people inheriting a few $100,000 from their parents who worked in energy or television industries because they say inheriting so much is an unfair advantage, and they will vote left-wing for it. And they will demand tax laws to fight it. Those people contradict themselves when a monarch lets people inherit the whole country. In particular, the monarch family of Canada are the most homophobic family on the planet. They stand, smile, and watch as innocent people imprisoned or killed in the territory they're in charge of. They watch economic crisis and budget crisis over and over, and persist to continue stealing billions of tax money for themselves. Every day, they are capable of dropping taxes and serving their country with just one simple action, but instead, they choose the way of greed. And don't give me the philanthropy rubbish because, I've said before, charity doesn't work. If it does a % as much help as it seems, and it comes with lots of hidden consequences. And in either case, they started the charities with money that wasn't theirs to start a charity with. Imagine working your whole life, paying taxes on a low-pay job. In your whole lifetime, you pay $249,000. You were told it would keep the hospitals open, the streets clean, and the nation served. But all you have to show for your life and taxes is 1 year of feeding and housing some guy doing nothing only because he was the brother of the heir. They look corruption in the eye and wink. This is the way of the monarch. This is the way of Canada. But which parties is this the way of more? Only Conservatives and Liberals have had Prime Ministers so far, so the others are off the hook. I'm not going to say they're innocent until they condemn monarchs because remember, no mention, no merit. But I will only give points to the confirmed guilty for now. Both of them stood there and watched as their country was drained, not led. But who did the most coronations? Every coronation is an opportunity for the government to decide if it wants to accept the new head of state or stand brave against dictatorship. If they accept a coronation, they condemn the people to the whims of a nuthead. They had the choice to defy and lead the people in revolt. Instead, they state where their loyalties lie. Liberals have done this 6 times. Conservatives have never done this once. 10 points each, so Liberals get 60 bad points, and their bad point line towers below the others. The radioactive medal is what I'm giving out to the worst of something. Liberals get the radioactive medal. This is what Canada wants. In a world where we talk so much that racism is wrong because it condemns people based on their heritage, you wouldn't ban someone from being head of state because they had African heritage, or they were white, or they had brown hair. But Canada will condemn people for something as specific as their parents, which is a part of their heritage. This is a racism marksman. Next is tax. We heard a bit about Green and NDP tax, but people want to hear the history of tax between Conservatives and Liberals because this is where we find out who we can trust, who is rising taxes, who is weakening tax rules. The worst one should be wiped out so taxes can improve, and then maybe a third party could replace the worst one and make lots of it even better. But who is the worst party we need to wipe out first? The information I could access online helped me make this graph, comparing the time to the amount of some taxes added together that apply to Canadians of a consistent salary. With Liberals in charge, it has its rises, but eventually it finds its way down. After that time, Conservatives also have their rise, but in the end, it's lower than it started. By the maths, Liberals in total dropped it 0.5% more than they rised it. Conservatives, the same. The difference is, for the same amount of drop, Conservatives did it 2 years faster, but the Liberals did it a bit smoother. This could lead you to think the Liberals are the villains again, but this is just a small bit of the long story, so let's look longer. Technically, the history of tax in Canada, as it is Canada, begins with the dawn of the nation, when the federal government was given control of the tax rules and amounts. But I'm starting the details of the story where it gets interesting, and I had time to learn it, during the Great War. At this time, so far, the government made its money from tariffs, which would only benefit Canada's own people, and a few specific industry taxes that didn't apply to most Canadians. But the Great War was expensive as all hell. The government was short of cash. So in 1917 Common Era, they did the unthinkable. They introduced income and corporation taxes. Now, everyone who had a job was demanded to pay the government, mostly to pay for the war and cover any money holes it created. So I guess the common people put in a great effort in the war, whether they were in the army or not. So remember everyone, you speak to civilians as if you were speaking to soldiers. Every possible taxpayer is a savior of the country. Conservatives promised this was temporary to cover the debt of war. Then the years turned to decades and eventually over a century. The Conservatives have had this many chances to keep their promise and end the tax, but instead they showed their promises mean nothing. Conservatives are maggot-toothed liars. They don't care about the welfare of Canada, they care about their own wallets, and that's exactly where a vote for them goes to. Conservatives weren't done squeezing money out of their subjects the way they squeeze water out of a helpless sponge. They also, in 1920 Common Era, created general sales tax, so at pre-production, production, post-production, delivery, retail, marketing, and so on, there was a layer after layer of tax, against money that had already been taxed. For example, if you get biscuits at a cafe in 1921 Common Era in Canada, it will have been taxed for you to buy it, and before that taxed for it to be baked, and before that taxed for ingredients to be farmed, plus all the delivery taxes from farm to bakery to cafe. But look, in 1924, Liberals introduced manufacturers' sales tax, so they're bad too, right? The truth is, manufacturers' sales tax was not added. It was a replacement of general sales tax. So all Liberals really did was look at the aggressive draining tax at so many levels of industry and apply it to less layers. They ended a load of taxes. This money need be taxed only once. Better than over and over again. In 1987 Common Era, the Conservatives started a long project which finished on New Year's Day, 1991 Common Era. Was it ending some more taxes? No! It was starting more ones! MST only applied to supplies and objects. Conservatives thought, what about services? Let's tax them too! I swear, if I ever hear the Conservatives complain that the government is short on money, I'm going to be furious. So yeah, build up your excitement. Liberals are way better than Conservatives when it comes to taxes. No doubt, no contest, no debate. 10 good points for Liberals ending some taxes. Finally, any good points for them whatsoever. 30 bad points for the 3 taxes Conservatives introduced. Liberals finally won something. Sure, Green and NDP had their tax plans which can be compared, but Liberals are the ones with a history of being, well, conservative about them. A history not to be too ashamed of. And from what I know, a lot of people only see the need to introduce new parties when the dominant ones are all rubbish. But in the topic of tax, that's not essential. There's a dominant party good at solving tax already. I'm not giving Liberals any medals because that would be unfair to Green and NDP, so we'll save the ranking for next time. But Conservatives get a radioactive one. They seem rubbish compared to Green now. Voting Liberal to protect your money from greedy thugs in suits is something I can finally understand. Only as much as voting NDP or Green though. So in this moment, be happy, be excited, because there is now a possibility that some Canadian taxes are going to be axed, and the threat of more being dumped on the public is defeated. So on that bit of optimism, I'm going to say to be continued. I'll finish this in part 2. Other than that, I will see you in the apocalypse. And subscribe to survive.